Have you ever felt like the more you tried to change your life, the more stuck you became? Like you were running on a treadmill of self-help, affirmations, meditations, journaling, working harder, yet the finish line never got any closer? What if I told you that your deepest transformation might not come from trying harder, but from not trying at all? Yes, doing nothing. Not in the sense of laziness, not in avoidance, but in a radical, intentional act of surrender, of creating space, of allowing life to meet you, not the other way around. This isn't a motivational talk about crushing your goals. It's a quiet invitation to reimagine your inner life through the wisdom of one of the most profound psychological minds in history, Carl Jung. We live in an age obsessed with productivity. From morning routines to 5-year plans, we are taught that action equals progress and stillness equals weakness. But Jung believed the opposite might sometimes be true. When your conscious desires like success, love, peace are in conflict with your unconscious beliefs like unworthiness, fear, shame, no amount of action will break the cycle. You may tell the world you're ready for love, but what your body whispers is that love isn't safe. You may say you want abundance, but your nervous system remembers scarcity as home. That's not failure, that's friction. And that friction creates resistance, and whatever you resist persists. We push, strive, and manipulate outcomes, exhausting ourselves in the process. But what if life was never asking you to try harder? What if your next breakthrough doesn't come from more discipline, but from a deeper alignment, from no longer swimming against the current of your own truth? That is the paradox Jung taught us. Transformation doesn't come from doing more. It comes from becoming more. And to become more, sometimes you need to do nothing at all. In this video, we will journey through what Jung called the creative void, the sacred stillness between the death of an old self and the birth of a new one. We'll talk about why your efforts may be sabotaging your growth, how silence can become your most powerful tool, and how doing nothing with awareness might be the most courageous act of all. And yes, we'll share real-life stories of people who stopped chasing and finally found what they were seeking all along. But first, let's explore. Why are we so afraid of stillness in the first place? Stillness exposes us. In silence, all the noise we've used to distract ourselves, our busyness, our achievements, even our suffering, begins to fade. And underneath it all, we're left with ourselves. Not the persona, not the ambition, not the image. Just the raw self. And that's terrifying, but also beautiful, because only in that stillness can we begin to hear the voice we've silenced for too long. The voice of our unconscious, the voice of our shadow, the voice of our truth. Let's begin with a question Carl Jung often returned to in many forms. Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate. You see, most of us believe we're living consciously. We think we're choosing our jobs, our relationships, our habits. But in truth, most of us are operating from programming that began long before we had the power to question it. These aren't just abstract ideas. They shape real lives every single day. Let me tell you a story. There was a woman named Mira, ambitious, kind, and deeply self-aware. She read all the books, meditated every morning, practiced gratitude daily, and yet she couldn't figure out why all her relationships collapsed the moment she felt emotionally safe. No matter how aligned she thought she was, she always sabotaged love. In therapy, one moment unraveled everything. As a child, Mira's mother only showed affection when Mira achieved something. A perfect grade, an award, praise from others. Love, to Mira, was something earned, not received freely. So as an adult, whenever someone offered unconditional love, her nervous system panicked. It didn't feel like love, it felt like danger. No amount of journaling or manifesting could change what her body believed, so her therapist suggested something radical. Don't try to fix it. Sit with it. Be still long enough to hear what it's trying to say. Mira stopped dating, stopped reading advice columns. She just listened. She journaled her fear instead of overriding it. She didn't distract herself when she felt lonely. She sat with it. She stopped trying to change and started learning from the parts of her she had been trying to silence. And slowly, the pattern dissolved. Not because she forced it, but because she finally made the unconscious conscious. Carl Jung believed the external world reflects our internal world with brutal honesty. If you walk into a room and believe you're unworthy, you will notice only the people ignoring you. If your core belief is that you're unsafe, life will present you with endless situations to confirm it. But here's the twist: most of these beliefs are not even yours. They were inherited, programmed by childhood, by trauma, by culture. You didn't choose them, but now they are choosing for you. That's why stillness is terrifying, because when we stop doing, the being takes center stage. And that being may be carrying decades of unconscious pain, longing, shame, and fear. But only by sitting with it, rather than fleeing from it, do we begin to rewrite the script. This is why Jung emphasized integration over suppression, no matter how painful they may be. We're not here to kill the ego, crush the fear, or silence the shadow. We're here to meet them, hold space for them, listen deeply, and integrate. Because what you do not integrate will sabotage you. Doing nothing sounds simple, but it's an act of profound discipline, because your mind will scream, "Shouldn't I be doing something right now? Am I wasting time? Why don't I feel better yet?" And that's the test. Can you sit through the discomfort of not fixing? Jung would argue that discomfort is the work. Let me offer you a challenge today, just for 10 minutes. Sit somewhere quiet, don't scroll, don't journal, don't plan. Just breathe and notice. What thoughts rise, what feelings bubble up, what part of you tries to interrupt the silence? That voice, that impulse, is your teacher. You're not trying to fix it. You're meeting it, perhaps for the first time in your life. Stillness is a mirror, but unlike most mirrors, this one doesn't reflect your image. It reflects your essence, and that essence is already whole. You just forgot. And you've been trying to earn your way back to something that was never lost to begin with. We'll dive into the creative void, the most misunderstood yet sacred space in the human experience, and how Jung believed transformation is born not in activity, but in silence. There's a moment in every healing journey where the old no longer fits, but the new hasn't quite arrived. It's that in-between space, silent, still, uncertain. Jung called this the creative void. And if you've ever truly paused, truly surrendered, you've been there. It's not depression, though it can feel heavy. It's not laziness, though it may appear still. It's not giving up. It's a sacred pause, a psychological womb. In this void, all the identities you've clung to begin to dissolve. The overachiever, the caretaker, the perfectionist, the wounded child. They fade not because they were bad, but because they've done their part, and now something deeper is trying to emerge. But here's the paradox. You cannot force the new self to arrive. You can only wait and trust, and let the void do its quiet work. Carl Jung believed the psyche undergoes natural cycles of death and rebirth, just like nature. When winter comes, trees don't panic. They drop their leaves, they conserve energy, they become still. Why? Because that stillness is not death, it's preparation. It's inner reorganization. It's the wisdom of life, knowing that growth happens underground before it blossoms above. The same is true for your psyche. When you hit a wall, emotionally, spiritually, existentially, your mind may scream for action, but your soul whispers, "Be still. Something is shifting. Don't interrupt it." This is where most people give up. Mistake the stillness for failure. They flee the void and run back to old identities, relationships, patterns, just to escape the discomfort of waiting. But Jung saw this phase not as absence, but as birth in progress. Let me share the story of Rafik, a successful tech founder in his early 30s. He sold his company for millions. He had freedom, fame, and endless options. But 2 months after the sale, he fell into what he called a psychic collapse. No goals motivated him, no conversations excited him, no place felt like home. Everyone called it burnout. But inside, Rafik knew something deeper was happening. He didn't need a vacation, he needed silence. So he unplugged, literally. He gave away his phone, moved into a cabin in the woods, and for 3 months he did nothing. He journaled, he walked, he sat in discomfort. And he wept, not because he was broken, but because he was unlayering. What emerged wasn't a new business plan. It was a new relationship with himself. For the first time, Rafiq realized all his success was a way to outrun his fear of insignificance. The creative void stripped him of that illusion, and in that emptiness he found something that doesn't need applause. Peace. Let's pause here. If you're in a season where nothing makes sense, where nothing is working, where you feel like you're floating in space with no direction, take a breath. You are not broken, you're not behind. You're in the void. And the void is where the new you is forming. You don't need to know the next step. You don't need to fix your feelings, you just need to trust the intelligence within you. The same intelligence that grows forests without instruction, because the deeper self doesn't respond to effort, it responds to presence. And that presence becomes possible only when you stop. When you stop chasing, when you stop pretending, when you stop grasping at answers, and allow the answers to find you. Tonight, when all is quiet, ask yourself, if I stopped running, if I stopped forcing, what would be left of me? Don't answer too quickly, let the question sit, because in that question, the void is speaking, and your next self is listening. We'll explore what Jung called individuation, the process of becoming whole, and how doing nothing is not the end of growth, but the beginning of authenticity. When you stop chasing, when you sit in the stillness of not knowing, something sacred begins to stir. The process isn't loud or glamorous, it doesn't come with fireworks, but make no mistake, it is a revolution, inside you. Carl Jung called this process individuation. It's not self-improvement, it's not productivity, it's not becoming a better version of yourself, it's becoming whole. Individuation is the integration of all the parts of you you've pushed away, the light and the shadow, the strong and the scared, the confident and the confused. It's realizing that you are not just your goals, your wounds, your personality type, or your trauma. You are something deeper, more fluid, more complete. Jung believed that most suffering comes not from external events, but from living out of alignment with your true self. We wear masks in jobs, relationships, even spirituality, all to avoid confronting who we really are. And the longer we run, the louder the pain becomes. Now you might ask, isn't sitting still just a way of avoiding life? And here's the key. True stillness is not escape. It's inquiry. There's a difference between numbing out and tuning in, between avoidance and awareness. When you numb out, through social media, binging, busyness, you fall asleep to yourself. But when you tune in, with no agenda, no performance, you start to see, you begin to notice the patterns that have controlled your life from the shadow. You see how your people-pleasing is really a mask for fear of abandonment. You recognize how your perfectionism hides a terror of feeling not enough. And most importantly, you start to realize none of these patterns are who you really are. They were survival strategies, but now they're outdated. Individuation is the process of retiring those masks and reclaiming your truth. Let me tell you about Monica, a school counselor who spent her life taking care of everyone but herself. After a sudden divorce in her early 40s, she found herself alone in a new apartment, with no kids, no husband, and, as she described it, no identity. At first, she did what many of us do. She tried to fix it. New hobbies, online dating, self-help books. But nothing stuck. Nothing healed. Then one night, sitting alone in her kitchen, something broke open. She stopped. She cried. And she did something radical. She chose silence. For the next 12 months, Monica committed to what she called a year of listening. She stopped giving advice, stopped performing positivity, stopped pretending she was fine. And in that silence, she started hearing a voice she hadn't heard since childhood. Her own. She began writing letters to her younger self. She took long walks with no phone. She even sat in the bathtub for an hour each evening, not to relax but to feel. What emerged wasn't a new Monica. It was the real Monica, the one who had been buried under years of roles, responsibilities, and false resilience. Jung said, "I am not what happened to me. I am what I choose to become. But sometimes, what we choose to become is not new. It's what we've always been underneath the noise. You don't need to manufacture a new identity. You need to unearth the one you've ignored. And that unearthing doesn't happen in productivity. It happens in stillness, doing nothing. Real, conscious, intentional nothing is the doorway to that process. It creates a vacuum, an inner space where the deeper self can rise. You stop trying to become and start being what you are. It is from this place that you can love freely, forgive without needing apology, create without chasing validation. Because you're no longer acting from lack, you're living from truth. One of the biggest fears people have about slowing down is this: if I stop, the world will fall apart. If I stop helping, fixing, producing, I'll be forgotten. But here's the deeper truth. You are not here to fix the world. You're here to awaken to your place within it. And ironically, when you become more whole, you become a greater force for healing. Not because you're trying to save any, but because your very being carries presence, clarity, integrity. You don't give from depletion. You give from overflow. That is individuation in action. We'll tie everything together and reveal how doing nothing becomes the foundation for true, lasting change in your relationships, creativity, and even your future. What if your next breakthrough isn't behind another achievement, but behind a pause, a breath, a moment of radical stillness? This is where transformation begins. We've spent so much of life trying to change, trying to fix, trying to become. But what if you didn't need to become anything new? What if you just needed to remove what was never yours, the fears you inherited, the roles you were taught to play, the voices that weren't yours to believe? Jung's deepest insight wasn't about personality types or dream symbols. It was this: the privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. And the paradox? Sometimes you arrive at that person, not by doing more, but by finally doing less. When you stop controlling, something remarkable happens. Life begins to move again, and not in chaos, but in flow. You meet people you didn't chase, ideas arise that you didn't force, peace returns. Not because your problems vanish, but because your identity isn't built on struggle anymore. You've stopped living in reaction, you've started living in resonance. This is the power of doing nothing. It reorients your entire life from outside in to inside out. Let me share a message from someone named Lean who left this comment on a previous video. I always thought doing nothing meant failure. But last year I burned out, left my job and sat still for the first time in 15 years. I didn't collapse. I reconnected. I didn't lose myself. I found parts of me I had abandoned. Her words echo something we all carry but rarely say, that stillness isn't weakness, it's wisdom, it's strength, and it's a choice. One you can make today. Let's make this real. Here are 3 inner shifts that doing nothing actually invites. You no longer push parts of yourself away. You embrace the shadow, the fear, the vulnerability, and see them as messengers. Instead of saying, I need to stop being anxious, you ask, what is this anxiety trying to protect me from? You don't chase love, abundance, or clarity. You become the frequency that attracts them naturally. When you feel whole inside, your relationships shift, not because they change, but because your expectations stop coming from lack. You stop measuring your worth by output. You start valuing your presence, your energy, your essence as enough. Your to-do list shrinks, but your impact deepens. You no longer rush through life. You move with it. This is the secret Jung tried to teach us, that the universe isn't holding anything back. It's simply reflecting who you believe you are. And when you sit still long enough to remember that you're already whole, you become the kind of person who doesn't need to beg for peace, because you embody it. You stop searching for clarity, because you've become a clear space. You no longer chase love, because your love has come home to you. Before we close, take a breath right now. Inhale deeply, exhale slowly. Feel that? That's not emptiness, that's space. That space is you, and it's enough. Sometimes doing nothing is the bravest thing you'll ever do, and the most powerful, because in that space, everything finds its place. If this message spoke to something in you, comment below. I choose to align through stillness. Subscribe to Inner Rise Journey for more soul-deep reflections inspired by Carl Jung, psychology, and the quiet power within you. Like this video if it helped you pause. Share it with someone who's tired of running and ready to remember who they are. Until next time, stay present, stay whole, and trust the silence. It knows what you've forgotten.